some basic terminology stuff that we need to know, and then over the next, 8 chapters, we will flesh out a lot of this stuff. But we need to start so that we have some basic ideas of things, and then we'll move on from there. So we need to know what's going on internationally. We need to know that this is what's going on between us and China. This is what's going on here. So the U.S. government has an accounting system, which is called the balance of payments. Really, there's a whole big thing called the ITA and the IIP, the International Trade Accounts and the International Investment Position. So it used to be this bound trades thing was pretty simple, but because of the financial crisis, we changed the way we do all this, and it's much more complex now, which is the whole thing about closing barn doors after horses are gone. But it's an accounting system. The traditional balance of payments is a set of accounts. So we have something called the current account. We used to have something called the capital and financial account. Now we have the capital account and actually the financial accounts. There's a plural accounts in there, but your book just kind of leaves that out to not complicate your life, and I'm fine with that. And then there's something called statistical discrepancy. The problem with all this is, how does the government actually know what goes on? So if there's an international student here at UNLV and their mom sticks $100 in a birthday card and mails it to them, how does the government know that that money came into the U.S.? Well, the answer is the government has no clue that that money came into the U.S. Okay? If someone's here in the U.S. from Guatemala and they're working in the U.S. and every week they take $100 and they send it back to their family in Guatemala, how does the U.S. government know that? And the answer is the U.S. government doesn't know that. So there's lots of stuff that's going on internationally that the government can't possibly figure out. When it gets done adding up all its accounting books, they don't balance. They're out of balance. Okay? If you've taken accounting, you know that the debits and credits are supposed to balance out. When you get down to the bottom, you're supposed to have the same two numbers, right, on each side. So do not try this at home because it would be illegal for you or me to do, but the government can get away with it. They get down to the bottom of the books and the numbers don't match. So they add in a number to make the thing balance. Don't try that with your accounting homework, right? You'll get in big trouble. And they call it statistical discrepancy. We'll talk about that again in a second. All right, so the parts of this. Part number 1 is what's called the current account. The current account is mostly the imports and exports of goods and services. So a tourist lands here in Las Vegas from somewhere else, they're in the current account. We sell Spam to England, they're in the current account. We buy clothes from China or an iPad from China, it's in the current account. They buy soybeans from us, it's in the current account. All right? The current account is these one-time transactions. It also has income in it. So if you are an employee of Honda of Japan, but you work in the U.S., you're working in the U.S. and your paycheck is coming in from Japan, you're in the current account. If you're mailing somebody money outside the country, it's probably in the current account. Okay? And then lots of government transactions are in the current account. Do we have military bases all over the world? Yes, we do. Is money leaving the U.S. and going there? Yes, it is. Are we buying food for soldiers in Germany? Yes, we are. Okay? So all of that kind of stuff shows up in the current account. Got it? All right. We have this thing called the capital account. It's mostly licenses, copyrights, patents. So this woman named J.R. Rowling writes this book in the early 90s called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And it's published in England. It's actually a ripoff of another novel, and you have to take more econ or go to law school, and you can discuss that. But she stole the idea from another person, writes this book called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The publisher who publishes in England doesn't publish in the United States. So they want to publish the book in the United States. What you're going to do? Well, what they do is they make an agreement with a U.S. publisher to publish the book in the United States. So they license that company in the U.S. the right to publish the book, and they publish it in the U.S. as Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Okay? Every time you buy a copy of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in the United States, money flows back to England on this licensing agreement, and that money is going to be in the capital account. Exciting? Yeah. All right. Then we have these financial accounts. The financial account is about assets. If you take some money and you go buy, there's lots of celebrities that have vacation homes in France. They bought homes in France. And the reason you buy a home in France, if you're Halle Berry or Shania Twain or all these people, is because France has laws that you can't take someone's picture without their permission. So celebrities, they walk around the U.S., everybody's always taking their picture and putting it on, TMZ. Can't do that in France. Right? When money leaves the U.S. to go to France to buy that house in France, that money's going to show up in the financial accounts. There are condos all up and down the strip in Las Vegas, yes? And many of those condos are owned by people who live in other countries. When that money comes into Las Vegas from those foreign countries, it's going to show up in the financial accounts. When Fiat in Italy buys Chrysler in the United States, that money shows up in the financial accounts. My sister's a real estate broker in Hawaii. Her biggest group of clients are from Australia. All of that money that's coming in to buy those Hawaiian homes from the people in Australia, that money is going to show up in the financial account. So it's about assets, about things we own, U.S. citizens own in other countries, and citizens of other countries own stuff in the U.S. Okay? Simple? The important thing to remember about the financial accounts is that it creates a relationship. So if someone from China comes to the U.S. and buys a U.S. government bond, that money is going to show up in the financial account. When they buy that asset, it forces more payments. So now we're going to have to pay interest to China, and eventually we're going to have to pay that bond off. So the acquisition of that asset means there's additional money that's going to flow one way or another. When somebody from China buys a condo on the strip, they're still going to have to pay electrical bills. They're still going to have to pay insurance. They're still going to have to pay their property taxes. So more money is going to come in. The things in the current account, it's a one-time deal. It doesn't obligate anybody to anything else. The things in the financial accounts, there's obligations. We own assets now. We own something in that other country, or they own something here. And then there's legal requirements for money to continue to flow. We got that? Hopefully. And then, when we add up the current account, the capital account, and the financial accounts, it should add up to zero. Okay? Our current account is almost always a minus, which means we ship more money out of the country, we buy more imports than we do exports, and money's leaving the country in the current account, and the money's coming back in the capital and financial accounts. Okay, so there's a statistical discrepancy. It doesn't always add up, and we just throw whatever we need, 10 billion, 50 billion, whatever it takes to make it balance. We just add that in at the end. Again, do not do that in your accounting homework. You will get in big trouble. A trade deficit, a trade deficit should be just the balance on imports and exports. It should be a negative balance on the imports and exports part of the current account. But sometimes people refer to a negative balance on the current account as a trade deficit. Could be one way or the other, but it's a negative balance. Negative balance means more money left the United States than came into the United States. And we saw that in that circular flow diagram and some other places. Okay? It turns out when we have a trade deficit, we pay for it by selling our assets to other countries. So we go into debt. The trade deficit increases our debt to other countries. We become a debtor to other countries. We owe them stuff. Okay? Okay? Yeah? All right. Yeah, all right. We'll talk about that more in a second. So we have these things called exchange rates. When we want to buy something from China, we pay them in yuan, their currency. When we want to buy something from Japan, we pay them in yen, their currency. When somebody from Japan wants to buy a Corvette, they're going to pay us in dollars. That means people in the world are constantly trading one currency in for another. They're buying, using their money to buy somebody else's money. We use dollars to buy yuan. People in China use yuan to buy dollars. Okay? And there are these markets where that happens. And again, we'll talk about this in way more detail toward the end of class. But there are markets where these trades happen. All over the planet Earth, there are places where you can trade dollars for yen and yens for dollars. Okay? That means that the prices of currencies are like the stock market prices. They're constantly going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay? Set in the market. So $1 might be equal to 115 yen. It might be equal to 21 pesos. It might be equal to 0.93 euros. It might be equal to 11.7 Estonian kroon. It might be equal to 1.8 Bulgarian lev. And it might be equal to 6.8 yuans. Chinese currency. Okay? The yuan technically is the renminbi. Its technical symbol is RMN, renminbi, which kind of means like the people's money, but yuan. All right, let's really quick talk about how this works. Let's say that we here in the U.S., this is us over here, right? We're here in the U.S., and we want to buy a printer that's made in China. How do we do that? Well, we take dollars. They don't want our dollars. Actually, they do, but they don't want our dollars. They want yuan to buy that printer. What are we going to do? All over the world, there are these currency markets. And you can think of them as like an Albertsons, a grocery store, that when you walk into the grocery store, instead of there being a canned food aisle and a, milk aisle, there's a dollar aisle and a yen aisle and a yuan aisle and a won aisle and a baht aisle, and each aisle has a different kind of money in it. So you need yuan because you want to buy this printer. So you go over to the yuan aisle, you grab the yuan that you need to buy the printer, you walk over to the counter, you give it to the person behind the counter, they go beep, $100. And you give them the $100, and you take your yuan and you walk out. Okay? Think about that again. You're walking into the money store. You're taking the yuan out so you can go buy the printer. You're giving them dollars. They're going to put those dollars into the dollar aisle. As we keep buying more and more and more and more and more stuff from China, what's going to happen? Well, the yuan are going to go away. There's going to be fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer yuan on the shelves, and there's going to be more and more and more dollars. Okay? So what's scarce? Well, the yuan's becoming scarce. The dollar's becoming plentiful. If we're a grocery store and we can't keep the yuan on the shelf, what's going to happen to the price? It's going to go up. If there's so many dollars and we just can't get rid of them, how do we have a sale on dollars? We lower the price. Okay? So as we're buying all this stuff from China, the yuan should be going up in value and the dollar should be going down. Now, it turns out that what happens is China sticks yuan back in the store and takes the extra dollars out. And again, we'll talk about this more in depth when we get to toward the end of class. But they're going to keep the dollar value from changing. All right? So now let's use Japan as the example. We trade dollars to buy yen from Japan. So here's the supply and demand. It's the quantity of dollars and the price of the dollar. The dollar, let's say the dollar is 100 yen. Okay? So if you're Japanese, 100 yen buys you $1. If you're American, $1 buys you 100 yen. All right, we're good there? Now we want to buy something from Japan. Or Japan wants to buy something else. So the Japanese want to buy something from the U.S. So let's say the Japanese want to buy oranges from California. They need to get dollars. So they're going to go to the market. They're going to put yen in and take dollars out. So they need dollars, right? They want to get their hands on dollars. That means they're demanding dollars. Yes? So exports, the U.S. exports to Japan, they demand the dollar. That's going to shift the dollar out, increase the demand for dollars, and that'll raise the price of the dollar. The dollar's more valuable. So every time we export, it makes the dollar more valuable. When we import, we have to put money into the market. So we're supplying. When we buy stuff from China, we're putting money into the market. We're supplying money to the market. That moves the supply curve out, and it lowers the value of the dollar. So every time you export, it should raise the value of your money. Every time you import, it should lower the value of your money. If your trade is balanced, your currency would stay balanced. Yeah. If your trade is balanced, your currency would trade balanced. If your trade is unbalanced, then the value of your currency is either going to rise or fall commensurate with the imbalance in your trade. And that rising and falling currency is going to change the prices of things. Now it's hard to get my hands on yuan. That should mean Chinese goods become more expensive because their money is scarce, right? And again, we'll come back to this as a bigger topic later. But let's look at, this is the yen to the dollar over time. So if we go back to 1972, and prior to 1972, as we'll talk about soon, the government set the exchange rate. So this kind of stuff didn't happen. But go back to 1972, you can see that it's about 350 yen to the dollar. So $1 bought 350 yen. Then what happens? Well, all of a sudden in the 70s, it's 200 yen. And since the 80s, it's been 100 yen. So think of this in terms of M&Ms. A dollar used to buy 350 M&Ms, then it bought 200 M&Ms, and now it buys 100 M&Ms. Does that make the dollar more or less powerful as a money? Well, yeah. The dollar's not worth nearly as much as it used to be. A dollar used to get you 350 yen, now it only gets you 100 yen. The dollar is not nearly as strong as it used to be. It's lost its purchasing power. What's that tell us? That tells us we have imported a lot more from Japan than we have exported. All those imports have brought down the value of the dollar. Exciting, yes? Okay. Now, we're going to go talk about some serious macroeconomic theory.